Today on Locked On Suns, Jusuf Nurkic surprisingly missing most of, if not all of preseason with a finger injury we didn't expect, but that opens an opportunity for the rookie Oso Ighodaro and potentially some bigger changes in the big man rotation. We'll break down Oso's big game and talk about if those changes are coming next.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Suns. I'm Brendon, Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to kick off your Tuesday. Don't forget, Locked On Suns is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So just click that follow or subscribe button to do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked onto the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by the Gametime app, the best place to buy a ticket. Download Gametime, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Joining me, as always, the executive producer of The Drive on Fox Sports 910 from the wonderful West Valley. How are we feeling on this Tuesday, Ben Garcia?
We are rocking and rolling. Sun season is here. Already getting like news every day now. We're not having to search for things before shows. Kind of nice to be able to have the heavy lifting done beforehand, but I'm stoked, man. Let's get right to it.
Don't you wish you started in October? Wouldn't that have been nicer? We wouldn't have had to scratch.
No, because then we had to. Well, I think that is a good thing even for you too, that you aren't having just to come up with everything on your own. But I mean, it would be nice to start in October, but it was like our preseason, right? We're feeling each other out.
Our training camp.
You're regretting decisions, but we can't go back at this point. And so, yeah, no, it's a good time.
Okay, so yesterday, of course, we recapped the Suns' win over the LA Lakers to kick off the preseason. You can go back and check out our episode in the feed if you didn't check it out. But we are going to break down one particular aspect of that game today, which is the center rotation and Oso Ighodaro and everything that might come along with that, with the added opportunity. But let's start with why that added opportunity is here, Ben, which is that Jusuf Nurkic is supposed to be missing at least a week from late last week. So I think Friday will be when he is supposed to be reevaluated. Finger injury, Mike Budenholzer said he's progressing as planned after the first few days of that diagnosis. Let me just start here. I mean, are you expecting that he'll play in the preseason, or do you think they'll just play this thing chill since he's a vet?
I mean, it's a kind of a two-part question. Like, I want him to play in the preseason because I want him to get the reps, just get his feet wet out there with the rest of the starting five so that everyone knows what they're doing. Do I think he's going to? No, because the smart play would be to rest a guy who I don't know what the severity is. Could just be something that they're being... Right? It could just be something that they're being extra cautious about. But if it's anything worse than that, like, yeah, I am kind of worried. And my expectation right now is that he's probably going to miss the preseason. What was your reaction to it? Do you feel if I'm not mistaken, which I'm not, Jusuf Nurkic had a hand or finger injury. I believe he missed the Nets game last year. Can't remember exactly what it was, but he missed a game last year. So I'm not sure if this is a reoccurring thing. Is it something we should be worried about? I just have PTSD, Brendon, from last year when everyone said, no big deal. Bradley Beal's going to play in the first game. Just a minor back thing. And then with Jusuf Nurkic, like, it's just a minor finger thing. Like, I do worry a little bit.
We know from having Chris Paul here in the Valley that hand injuries are nothing to overlook, but, you know, I guess you're right. Preseason injuries are never nice. They always tend to crop up kind of out of nowhere because guys get into the gym and in with the trainers and, oh, this thing is suddenly bothering him, but hard to know until we really see it play out. I will just say, so to go over the schedule to really give everybody a sense here. So they play Tuesday. When everyone will hear this, maybe we'll give our quick things to watch out for at the very, very end of the show. And then Friday, home against the Pistons. I'll be there. Sunday at Denver. And then they have a big break until Thursday of next week. So technically, even if he wasn't cleared until like Sunday, which would be like 9 days, he still could play in 2 preseason games. And if he's not cleared for Sunday, He has another 4 after that. So I tend to think he'll probably at least play in that Lakers game if this is as meager of a thing as the coaching staff is making it out to be right now. I will just say I am pretty I want to see him. I want to see him out here for one very specific reason, not just because it's nice to have everybody get reps in the preseason, and that's what preseason's for. It's more so that I'm very curious how he is going to fit with the way that we saw this team play in this first preseason game. And, you and I joked and talked a little bit about how some of the style or the schemes that we're overreacting to are possibly just the nature of an exhibition, basically a scrimmage game. But a lot of what we did see was pretty loose and pretty fast and heavy motion when they did get into half-court situations and all that stuff. And I'm not saying it's impossible for Jusuf Nurkic to fit, but I can tell you for a fact he's not going to be able to do what we saw the next guy we're about to talk about, the rookie, do. He's not moving and flying around the court the way that Oso Ighodaro was. So I'm a little curious how Nurk maps into that, and I do think that he's going to need some reps finding his spots in his comfort zone with the way that they're playing now with the point guard in the mix.
I just need to see 2 games. 2 games is perfectly fine for me, for Jusuf Nurkic to get his feet under him, to, at that point, if he's not, he'll play himself into shape. Again, I couldn't really, which is, again, we'll get to in a second here, because stat lines were on the mind of every Suns fan yesterday when it came to whatever players it was. And Jusuf Nurkic, I couldn't care less about anyone's stats, which is what I wasn't looking out for yesterday. A lot of it was, what was the offense? What are we going to get from it? Nurkic might have the biggest role change, even bigger than Bradley Beal's in a sense, in this new offense. Is he going to be Brook Lopez? Because Mike Budenholzer told us we're at least going to try to make him Brook Lopez.
Yeah.
Now, if it doesn't work, whatever. But I am curious to see how it's going to work, because you had mentioned it as well. He's not going to be flying around the court like Oso Ighodaro is at the 22-year-old just trying to make him name himself in the NBA. It's going to be very much Brook Lopez-esque, where any three he's going to be shooting is going to be standstill and design sets, not exactly for him, but he'll be the 3rd or 4th option on a team that just needs to make other teams pay when they're crashing on the big 3. So that's where
I don't think there's going to be any sets where he is necessarily designed to be involved with the way that we saw this team play. So that's different than last year, where not only was he being used as a playmaker, but he did get his fair share of post-ups and, everything else. So, Mason Plumlee was not heavily involved when he was in there, right? I mean, he was just kind of a screener. Is that all that Nurkic is going to be? I mean, what happens if those threes don't fall? I'm not trying to paint some kind of scary picture. I'm just illustrating why I do actually think, maybe more so than other players, why it's going to be particularly valuable for him to be out there. I mean, the dude's the starter on a team that's changing a lot of stuff. You just want to have that chemistry. Let's get into Oso's performance, talk about what we saw from the big man rookie, and then at the end of the show, try to piece this all together. Is there change brewing? Could this preseason spell some new wrinkles we weren't expecting in terms of how this all falls out, style-wise, rotation-wise? We'll wrap there. First, today's show is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. NFL fans, start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Honestly, we're about the time. You might as well be starting the NBA season that way, too. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. You will get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed, when you place your first $5 bet. Arizona Cardinals line is... They are 5.5-point underdogs in the wonderful city of Green Bay, which I guess is not super cold yet. That's a nice time to be playing. The Packers have not looked quite as great, but it is the Cardinals on the road against a team that they're not used to playing, who most people would call better than them. Either way, though, here's the deal. You might lose that bet. You might win that bet. It does not matter to FanDuel. They're giving you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed either way, all at FanDuel.com. Let's keep it rolling. Ben, that was a record. I don't think we've done a first segment in under 10 minutes since we started the show. Look at us. We can do it. We actually can keep the pace. Okay. So, Oso Ighodaro, 27 minutes, basically acted as the starter.
Yeah.
And played garbage time once all the vets hit the bench. in this first preseason game. Finishes the game with 12 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds. He did have the 3 turnovers, but he was 6 of 8 from the field. What did you make? We came up a couple times. We didn't spend a lot of time on him, but I mean, he might have been the guy we got to see the most from in that game. What'd you think of the rookie's first action on an NBA court?
Yeah. So I love to interact with listeners. I like to respond to people, and every day I want to hear what the people have to say. So I'll check the YouTube comment section or whatever it is, people on social media, and I got some pushback on the Oso Ighodaro thing. The Oso was awesome. I don't know where you were watching, and I honestly didn't think my take was that crazy at all. I thought he played fine. And so I went back and I went and rewatched some of the things that Oso Ighodaro was doing. I went and watched the game logs. I went play by play, literally searching Oso's name. I'm like, did I miss something? I don't think I did. Oso Ighodaro was fine. I still stand by on every aspect that Ryan Dunn was way more impressive. And again, maybe he's just more important to this offense in the grand scheme of things. But like when you look at the box score, sure, Oso was objectively awesome. But when you look back on it, he had 1 rebound in the first quarter. That's all he did. With most players playing, that's what matters with Oso. There wasn't at that point, the benches were not empty. Second quarter, he came in, immediately fouled Anthony Davis. It's not until late in the second quarter we got his first points, and then a dunk from Kevin Durant. Like, there was just stuff from Oso Ighodaro where, like, I saw flashes, but my expectations, which I feel like are gotten way too big for guys. I believe it's Kevin Smith of Spot Track or whatever, who really liked him, or whoever it was. We do this every year. Keith Smith? See, look at that. I can name my commentators at least a little bit. We do this every year, and it sucks that sometimes I feel like I have to be the bad guy, where we latch on to this glorified bench player. As of right now, I'm not out on Oso Ighodaro at all. I think he can be a contributing player on this team, and I hate to even have to say that, but like with Bol, I said I didn't see it. I still don't see it with Bol. Before that, it was, Frank Kaminsky at times. I like Oso Ighodaro. A lot of what he did yesterday was in garbage time. No points that he scored were outside of 6 feet from the rim. I expected him to make those. Oso Ighodaro did not stand out for any of the wrong reasons, but I didn't think he was amazing. And so I just want to temper Suns fans' expectations for later in the season when Mason Plumlee is struggling and everyone's like, throw Oso in there. Like, he just might not be ready yet. And that's where I'm at with Oso Ighodaro. I just felt like it was way too much Oso and not as much of, wow, the offense looked really good. Ryan Dunn looked promising. That's where I'm at with the Oso Ighodaro thing in this aspect of, like, people just thought I said he sucked, and that's just not where I was at. Your response?
Well, fans love rookies. Like, let's just get that out of the way. I mean, people have been, Suns fans are hyped to see what, like, Jalen Bridges could do. It's like, it's new. There's obviously a high ceiling. We're tired of the past couple of years for this Suns team where nobody on the entire freaking roster had any kind of ceiling to speak of. Last year, we convinced ourselves some of these dudes did, and they didn't. And so it's just like, I get that. I get that instinct. But look, I would honestly, I'm closer to you than I think most fans, to be honest. I would call it closer to fine, but I guess for a few different reasons, right? Like, you mentioned the scoring. Oso Ighodaro could average 4 points a game this year, and that's not relevant to me of whether he had a good season or not. So what I'm looking for is really, can he play center in the NBA? That would probably be the baseline of how I'd describe what I'm looking at. And right now, to me, on both ends of the floor, frankly, I think that he's going to struggle to do that. I think in like 20 years ago, this guy would have been a fun power forward. And some coach would have just put him in as, Amari Stoudemire or whatever type of guy you want to compare it to. You mentioned Anthony Davis. I'm not going to hack a rookie for not being able to defend Anthony Davis, but that 1,000%. Is a test, though, right? That can be illustrative. And I think this one was, where that's one of the strongest, most physically, athletically overwhelming players in the NBA, and it showed. So, okay, that's a data point. And I honestly, above and beyond all that, okay, physically it might be a problem. He's not huge. He's not the tallest of tall. Kind of knew all of that stuff. The main reason why I think right now he's not going to cut it as an NBA center, his pick and roll defense was mistake prone. And again, okay, preseason game number 1. Like we all the caveats in the world, but if that can't get cleaned up and his head is on a swivel and the game is a little too fast for him, that's going to be the thing that gets in the way of him being able to even stay on the court and execute what it is that Mike Budenholzer needs. I almost said Frank Vogel. What Mike Budenholzer needs him to do in order to trust him to get any kind of minutes. We know he has to play center. The physicality is not going to benefit him. He has to be doing the other stuff and be limiting his mistakes, and he just made too many of them last night. So defensively in those pick and roll situations, that was the biggest weak point for me and what I want to see him get better at as the preseason rolls on.
I was texting you during it. I was like, ooh, Oso Ighodaro kind of got back down there very easily. Good contest. I have the message. I was like, good contest, but man, he got back down really easily. I know it doesn't seem like it, but I am trying to defend Oso Ighodaro. People know my feelings towards Bol. I think if he was going to be awesome by now, he would have already been so. Bol should be getting the second crack at the center and power forward positions if it comes to that. Not super fond of that either, but I am trying to temper expectations because I think my expectations are fine for Oso Ighodaro. He's a second-round pick. Hopefully one day at his peak, he can turn into a viable backup center that is not a liability in the playoffs and has some real strengths. He's clearly a very good passer. He's clearly very smart, and he does have potential to be a good defender. I just don't think any of that is now, and I think expecting that to happen this year at all is really unfair to Oso Ighodaro, and you are setting up your expectations to fail. That's why there's Mason Plumlee here. That's why there's Bol. So I thought I was very nice to Oso yesterday, but didn't.
Yeah, look, I mean, whatever. On the positive side, I think I will say we gave him a compliment in the first segment already. I think that a lot of the movement and the cutting and all of those types of things that Mike Budenholzer clearly wants from this team, he fits well into that. And so I think, again, there are the beginnings of what a role could look like for him on a team like this. I just think he physically and mentally will take time to adjust to what we're seeing. And there's nothing wrong with that. He is a little older than Ryan Dunn. He is not, 18 and a half or something like some of these rookies are. So maybe that learning curve is quicker than we're expecting. And maybe by March, we're having a different conversation. All I know is I think Ben and I are on the same page that it's probably not in October. And if he does get pressed into action, something like post defense is going to be a toughie, right? It's gonna be a struggle, not to mention some of that pick and roll and, guarding two guys at once and rotating back and boxing out. He was getting bodied on the glass a lot. Things like that where you're having to kind of make second efforts and read the floor. That didn't come along, and we'll see if it does.
Yeah, lastly, my most eye-popping moment for Oso Ighodaro is he never looked confused. Which is why I care so much about that. Let's say for some reason Oso Ighodaro is thrust into it for some capacity because of injury or because of whatever. I'm not worried about him not being in the right spot or not being knowledgeable enough of the game to where he's unplayable at times. And there's players like that. It just feels like the progression's going to take a little bit. But at the end of the day, he's clearly got it up here. And I do think he is an exceptional passer, aside from the fact that he did lead the team yesterday in turnovers. But that happens.
Yeah, but he also had probably
the most
second
minutes.
most
He had
assists.
27
second
minutes.
most assists behind Tyus, tied with Colin Gillespie too. So, you take the good with the bad. Yeah, I think the way you put it is solid, and he is a good passer. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see if he has to play. We'll see what it looks like. I have a theory, though, that I will add to something I said yesterday about Ryan Dunn as we talk about this rotation and the ripple effects, not only of Jusuf Nurkic missing this time, having this lingering injury, but also not looking maybe ready to step into that role. We'll get there next. First, today's show is brought to you by the Gametime app, the best place to buy any ticket. Gametime also has a new feature called Gametime Picks, making getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. It's not just concerts, or it's not just sporting events. It is also concerts, comedy, and theater. Whatever you want to go to, wherever you are, Gametime is going to have you covered. That's basically the bottom line. I literally opened up the app once to scan my ticket to go to an event, a baseball game, and it was already showing me, hey, tomorrow there's actually this concert down the street, and it's a really good price if you want to go. All with those Gametime picks. In addition to the curated deals, seat views before you buy, all-in pricing. If you just flick that switch on, it tells you all of the price you're going to pay, not the hidden ones where, oh, by the way, we actually have this fee and that fee. They show it to you all up front. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. And let's close it out. Okay, so Ben, we've talked about Nurkic. Not crazy worried, but we'll see. Oso probably not ready. I said on Monday's show, recapping that Lakers preseason game, that I was not ready to do the whole Ryan Dunn versus Royce O'Neal thing, although you think Royce O'Neal's washed. I mean, I don't know if you want to double down on those comments.
Easy. Maybe it was a little late for me. Maybe it was just a little late.
And I said, okay, well, we'll see how that shakes out once we're seeing real rotation minutes.
Yeah,
I'm not sure of that. But I said, okay, Ryan Dunn's ahead of Bol in the rotation. That's something we can say for sure, right? And I think the way we should be putting it, because all throughout the summer, it was like, which rookie's going to make a bigger impact? Which, guy has a better path to minutes, higher floor, higher ceiling, blah, blah, blah. I actually think they're competing with each other for minutes. And I think some of the ways that you could have seen Oso Ighodaro get into this rotation and actually make an impact on this team, you actually just saw Ryan Dunn do it. What do you think?
I think it's tough to pin them against each other, that they're both kind of fighting for positioning when it comes to things like minutes at this point. They're just completely two different players in some aspects. Like Oso Ighodaro, I mean, he's 6'10". Ryan Dunn is listed at 6'6", probably a little bit bigger than that, bigger wingspan. They're just different players at this point. Oso, I don't think, is ever going to be asked to defend some of the players that Ryan Dunn is going to to defending.
Ryan Dunn is listed at 6'6". I think he's
listed at 6'6".
I think he's taller than 6'6".
He's got to be. He's in just look at that. Look at me doing research for the show, because this is all things that I was going
in my head. He's 6'8". Like if you had just asked me, I would have said he's 6'8".
I would have said 6'8" with a 6'10" wingspan. That's what I had thought. That's what he was listed at, if I'm not mistaken, prior to the draft. I don't know what ESPN has him on, but Oso Ighodaro was listed at 6'10". Yeah. Now,
but a smaller, like you said, wingspan's pretty much even. Yeah,
smaller frame. I also just don't think laterally Oso Ighodaro can move as well as Ryan Dunn does. I mean, listen, if they are positioning for minutes, it kind of worries me a little bit, even if that is a thing, because Ryan Dunn was a first-round pick, a late first-round pick, but a first-round pick nevertheless. I just expect him to be a level of NBA ready that I just don't expect from Oso Ighodaro, because he's a second-round pick. And I just don't think
they were like 15 picks apart.
But first and second round picks, man, like there is a completely different aspect to that. When at least for me, expectation wise, I expect guys to be completely separate from being first and second. I think they're more like 18 picks apart, but either way, neither here nor there. I have a different level of expectation for Ryan Dunn, and you can play it both ways. Yeah. If those guys are close, could be a good thing. Could be you hit two, or it could mean you hit two busts, which I worry about as well.
Look, I'm not saying that they're equivalent talents. That's not why I'm saying that they're competing for minutes. First, I looked it up. Ryan Dunn measured at 6'6.25" without shoes at the combine. So with shoes, he's 6'8". So we're right. Our read on it, looking at him, was closer. I don't know.
He looks big.
Yeah, I don't know why they're listing him at like the bare lowest he's ever, like that's weird.
They didn't even give him the eighth.
No. Yeah, exactly. They're like, you don't even get that. You're actually shorter than you measured up at.
That's great.
So, but yeah, no, I don't think it's because that they're equivalent talents. I think it's because of the types of ways that we're, I think, going to see Ryan Dunn thrive are also ways that I think we could have we could have potentially seen Oso Ighodaro thrive. So I'll be more specific. In the small ball lineups that we did see last night, where Kevin Durant was kind of the center, the biggest, tallest player on the court, and we saw him being like a roll man in the pick and roll at times, or we saw him having to guard up and things. To me, that's a situation where Oso could have potentially used his playmaking, used his switch defense, because in small lineups, you're bound to switch more often rather than having to defend the pick and roll or post defend an Anthony Davis type. Even lineups where maybe, if you're imagining that, a version where Jusuf Nurkic could potentially become a shooter, that makes another non-shooter a little easier to play on the court with him. So, like I said, Oso kind of feeling to me more like a throwback four. He's kind of a tweener right now. He's doing some center things, some power forward things, but he's not big enough to be one and not, talented and skilled enough to be the other. He could play with the center like Nurkic and maybe be able to kind of do that stuff and have some backbone to him. But Ryan Dunn is probably going to be the guy in those lineups, right? Because he is also a non-shooter who can make defensive plays and has a high IQ. It's about how are you deploying the players. And I think right now, because Ryan Dunn's maybe outshining what we expected in terms of some of the skill, and Oso is maybe undershooting the physical readiness, they're kind of both power forwards right now. And Ryan Dunn's just the better option to be that for this team for reasons we've kind of talked into the ground already. So that's where I think we're at. And it's about that role is checked. It's Dunn's role. Can Oso fill something else, or where do you go from there? And Oso just has to be that third center, fifth big, and not get minutes for a while.
Yeah. Okay. When you put it like that, then I get what you're saying. The reason why, if we're just comparing the two right now, the biggest thing that separates Ryan Dunn beating out Oso Ighodaro for those minutes is, one, that's why they drafted Ryan Dunn. He's a defensive specialist with the opportunity to potentially figure out a corner three. I look immediately with my wings, or those tweeners, as you had said with Oso Ighodaro, is their lateral quickness. It's what I really liked about Toumani Camara last year at the Summer League. I was like, oh, he's got a little bit of a twitch to him laterally on the perimeter. Something I'm not so sure Oso Ighodaro can do. He's a little flat-footed, where I would rather him be so more in the paint.
Well, again, he's good at it for a center, not so good at it for a four, right? Like,
it's fair, but those pick and roll options, those point guards could eat him alive. Where it's what I kind of liked about DeAndre Ayton is he didn't really get destroyed in that aspect. But with Ryan Dunn, I would rather him, and that's where I kind of feel like, and I think you think this as well, is that's just what's going to put him over Oso Ighodaro. But you are right. Yeah. That is exactly what they're both competing for. I like that analogy. Yeah. Well, not analogy, but comparison.
So, okay, we've talked about those two compared to each other. I think that they are competing in a way, but also there's more guys in this mix. So I want us to be wrong about Oso, because I think the Mason Plumlee minutes are sitting there to be taken. I don't think he's going to be bad. I think his floor is going to be much higher than Drew Eubanks. I've said that a bunch of times. I think he's totally serviceable on a minimum contract playing 12 to 15 minutes a night. I'm not trying to tear the guy apart, but the upside's limited. So there's minutes there to be taken. We talked about Bol probably not getting them. He's not a center to me. Bol needs to be a four.
It's too small. Well, too thin.
So, yeah. And so, I don't know. I think where I kind of come down, Ben, is there's a reason we saw those small ball looks opening night of the preseason with Durant out there as the biggest guy, and whether that's Dunn or that's even smaller with like a Royce O'Neal kind of as the four man, or whatever mixing and matching that they want to do from there. Maybe Bol does get involved in a lineup like that, and it's kind of him and Durant together as the two biggest guys, and they just try to make it work. I think that's going to be the third thing. It's not going to be Oso. It's not going to be Frank Kaminsky. I think it's going to be Nurk, Plumlee, and small ball. And I think we could maybe see the small ball overtake Plumlee as the season goes, or maybe, I don't know, maybe Nurk's minutes go down. But that's I think the other wrinkle. It's not the rookie, it's the small ball.
Yeah, no, this is something I thought about today. The Suns' biggest weakness right now, I do think, is size after watching the Lakers starters and like first 7 guys kind of bully the Suns down low. So the Suns are going to have to turn that weakness into a little bit of a weapon. If you're not going to be able to, like, you can't just put size out there just to put size out there. Mason Plumlee, Bull, just because they're tall doesn't mean it fixes anything. So
functional size.
Yeah, exactly. What you can do, though, is do like what the Warriors did for a long time, which is kind of a terrible comparison because they were the best small ball team ever. You can outrun teams. You can get out in transition. And if you're playing a bunch of smaller dudes and you're pulling their bigs from the basket, whether it's Oso, hanging out in the perimeter or on the elbow, whatever it is, that allows for you to be able to drive to the basket where you're kind of giving up a decent amount on defense, predicating on trying to get into passing lanes and then getting out in transition. But what you're more so trying to do is beat the opposing team with firepower on offense. So if the Mason Plumlee thing doesn't work out, which I'm open to, I think the best way to put it is the floor for Mason Plumlee is, I almost said Miles Plumlee, Suns legend, but the floor for Mason Plumlee is much higher than Oso Ighodaro right now, but the ceiling for Oso Ighodaro is way higher than Mason Plumlee. So over the season, you're just going to have to see what works.
Agreed. I mean, it's boring. Maybe not the flashiest note to end on, but all of that is not going to make anybody feel better about the rebounding issues that continue to plague this team. And
that's why you need Nurk, man. That's why you need Nurk. Bad.
And even with Nurk, it was a problem, right? So it just speaks to how big it's going to be. I mean, so last night in that game, the Lakers top 6 players, Jackson Hayes being their backup 5, he played quite a bit. If you add the starters plus him, those guys combined for 6 offensive rebounds in the limited time that they played together. Team only finished with 7 because, it's preseason and things just go crazy. But that's not great that everybody who played of the real players, basically everybody got on the offensive glass. The Suns are going to need to emphasize the glass. And I mean, it's a little far afoot, but just while we're on the topic, that is another part of the what I think they're going to have to kind of adjust to with playing faster. There are a lot of possessions where they sprint down the court. They allow the other team to sprint down the court. It turns into kind of a track meet. And then all of a sudden you look up and you're like, wait, why is Monte Morris guarding Rui Hachimura?
That is what happens.
And that was a problem yesterday. So rebounding will still be a thing no matter who's playing center. But I think we are on the same page about what to watch for the rest of the preseason and beyond as it comes to these big men. So we accomplished our mission. That'll wrap us up. Hit follow or subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be back post-game after preseason game number 2. Just watch the Suns demolish the Pistons and then come hang out with us. We'll talk to you